Hey everybody, I'm back with another update to AA tweaks or AA tweaks. This is version 0.3, which focuses on balancing some enchantments so that some lesser used ones are more desirable and some always go-to ones are not nearly as good. I also have a few other changes, mostly relating to equipment and just undoing some things of the previous update based on feedback, so let's get right into it. Most of the reverted changes come with the blast furnace, where I removed turning clay balls into bricks, clay into terracotta, terracotta into glazed terracotta, and sand into glass. Now, I did leave turning cobblestone into regular stone, as well as stone into smooth stone, and cracking bricks with the blast furnace. I figured those are fair since they're not necessarily tied to a kiln necessarily. I removed glowberries being turned into glowstone dust. That kind of changes a lot of progression, and that was definitely not intentional. And rotten flesh now takes twice as long to turn into leather. So instead of 2 times as long as a normal item, it's now 4 times. I had the idea of maybe turning it into a form of rabbit hide instead, obviously with a different name and possibly different item model. And then you just craft it. That way you'd need more than one versus just 1-to-1. Let me know if that's a good idea. I made iron bars climbable because I thought that would be kind of cool and makes a little bit of sense. I was considering adding some other blocks too, but like chains have a weird hitbox issue. For the next change, this is actually a revert from the first version where I made tridents available to find as loot. Previously, they were available in shipwrecks and buried treasure. This has been removed, and instead their chance of being found in underwater ruins has been increased. So let's go ahead and go looking. I think there's probably one right here. Nope, we didn't get one in there. What about, I think there's a chest in this place right here. Somewhere, there we go. And yeah, we got a trident. That was 2 chests. So yeah, if you want to go find a trident, your best chance is going to be looking for an underwater ruin. Another change to tridents is that ones with loyalty will now return to you from the void. This isn't necessarily tied to the loyalty enchantment itself, just something I added because it's a pretty popular decision among data packs and mods. So now, if you throw them in the end, for instance, they won't be gone forever. Now, multi-shot is a lot better because arrows themselves bypass cooldowns. And what that means is that every single arrow can hit separately. So if I hit this iron golem straight to the face, it will do the damage of 3 arrows. And so 5 shots in and I've killed the iron golem. And so yeah, this makes the crossbow a lot more desirable and the multi-shot enchantment a lot more desirable too, as you basically now have a shotgun. This is just with arrows and not fireworks because that would allow you to deal 60 damage to someone's face, and that's a little too overpowered. So it's just with arrows. Mobs with a really rare drop chance, like wither skeletons with their skulls, that normally have a 2.5 chance, now have a 3%, and each level of looting will add another 3% rather than 1, meaning with 3 levels of looting, you have a 12% chance versus about 5.5. So I've got looting 3 on my sword. Let's see how many of these guys it takes to get a wither skull. And I got lucky. That was actually my 3rd one. So yeah, now you don't have to go grinding nearly as much to get these types of things. Another change tied to drop chance is that husks will now drop sand as a chance. It's a pretty rare chance to get sand, but it is definitely farmable, as you can see. So yeah, you can now farm husks for a bit of sand. And now the changes I made to armor and weapons apply to mobs, as well as if you try to pull them out of creative. So this is the creative trident, but if I put it in my hand, it'll switch to the new version. And same thing happens if I say equip some golden armor, it'll just immediately change to the new values. But do just keep in mind this makes piglins a lot stronger since they're likely to have gold equipment. Alright, now we can move on to enchantments. And just as a note, this will pop up the first time you have this data pack put onto a world now that I've changed enchantments because they are considered experimental settings. All you gotta do is just click create backup and load, and you won't see this again. Don't worry, I'm not trying to destroy your world or corrupt or anything. It's just a precautionary measure that Mojang has for the game. Let's start out with armor, and the first thing I did was actually nerf everyone's favorite protection, which is protection itself. In my opinion, this enchantment is a bit overpowered for how cheap it is because it kind of removes the entire need of having any other protection enchantment when this one does the same job as those ones. So I actually nerfed protection, and now it only protects you from damage that armor itself already does. So if I go ahead, switch myself to survival and teleport an almost lethal distance down, I'll still take all that fall damage. Of course, this is kind of a big deal, so I actually buffed feather falling, and now level 4 will provide you with the full 80% damage reduction. So if I go back and teleport myself again, I take hardly any damage. The next thing I did related to protection enchantments is I actually merged a couple together. If you type impact, you'll see that there is impact protection. This is a combination of projectile and blast protection, which are now no longer in the game, and I figured combining them made these enchantments a bit more desirable since neither one of them were really worth getting over regular protection. I didn't actually add this as a new enchantment, I instead replaced blast protection, but if you do that, as you can see, it is impact protection. And since I put projectile protection into blast protection, projectile protection has now been changed into magic guard, which defends you and reduces damage from magic attacks. And if you're wondering what constitutes as a magic attack, that includes damaging potions like instant damage, poison, and wither, using ender pearls, mob attacks like evoker fangs, warden sonic booms, and dragon breath. And this is probably a really bad idea, but I'm curious to see how much damage this guy actually deals to me. Yep, not too much, though the fall did kill me. And currently this damage reduction is pretty high. It's 20% per level, meaning you can get a full reduction with just one armor piece. Magic isn't really a damage factor in the game since there aren't too many sources of it. So I might actually add more sources and then reduce the enchantment. The next enchantment I changed was Thorns. Now, in my opinion, Thorns is actually a really cool idea. The problem is the game essentially punishes you for trying to use it because it sucks really bad. For one thing, it doesn't have a very high chance of proccing, and when it happens to activate, it'll actually take an extra 2 durability from your armor, meaning your armor is going to wear out a lot faster. In addition, if you have multiple armor pieces, the damage cap is still limited at the max damage that one armor piece can do. So if multiple armor pieces activate at the same time and the collective damage would have been over the max of 1, you essentially just lose some durability on armor for no reason. So not just is this enchantment punishing, but by that definition, it's completely unfair. So I've done quite a few things to make this enchantment a little more usable. It normally has a damage range of 1 to 5. This has been decreased to a range of 1 to 3, but the chance for it to actually activate is much higher. So for instance, at level 1, you have a 1 1/3 chance of it reflecting damage, but at level 3, it will always reflect damage, as you can see. Additionally, if I just let myself get hit with a new piece of armor, that's 2 hits, 3, 4, and 5. If you check the armor, I've taken 10 durability because Thorn's armor penalty has been reduced to 1 instead of 2. So it still has a penalty. I still keep the original nature of Thorns, but it's certainly a lot less punishing. And the last change I made to Thorns is now having multiple pieces is actually beneficial instead of punishing, as I have removed the damage cap. By having Thorns 3 on all 4 armor pieces, your damage is always going to reflect, and it's going to be in a range of 4 to 12 damage with an average of 8. This does sound like a lot of reflected damage, but keep in mind this is a full set of Thorns 3, which you can't get normally by enchanting, and on top of that, Thorns is pretty expensive, so I feel like this is a decent payoff. It's not like you could just stand there and farm all day because your armor will break a lot faster. I can understand how this is a lot of damage, so if I need to nerf this, I will. I just wanted to make this enchantment a lot more desirable and a lot less punishing. And the last armor enchantment change I've made is related to Frostwalker. So first of all, you can actually activate this while jumping while in the air. If you were to take fall damage from actually landing on a block, then the ice will not form. Another benefit of this new system is that you can create a platform anywhere you want just by swimming up. And another buff I made to Frostwalker is it will turn powdered snow into regular snow, so you can walk without worry. And if you happen to be submerged in powder snow, it'll also form at your body, so you can easily jump out. Now, let's move on to weapons. So the first thing I did was actually combine a few enchantments that do the exact same thing, just so it declutters the amount of enchantments that are in the game. One of which is Flame, which can now be put on a sword and a bow alike. It does the exact same thing as Fire Aspect on a sword, but it's just one enchantment that you can put on both. And this enchantment only has 1 level, since Flame only has 1 level. The Flame for swords is about halfway between Fire Aspect 1 and 2, and the same can be said for Knockback, where Punch has been merged into Knockback. It does the exact same thing on a bow that Punch previously did, so I figured putting them together made things a bit easier since, again, they do the exact same thing. So the next weapon-related change I made is that Impaling works like it does in Bedrock Edition. It increases damage to any mobs that are in water or rain. Another change I think you all will like a lot is that Bane of Arthropods is finally good. And that's because it isn't Bane of Arthropods. It's actually a different enchantment completely. Now, of course, in commands, because I'm overwriting an old enchantment, it'll still say Bane of Arthropods, but if I go ahead and apply this, this is actually Illager's Bane. And if the name sounds familiar, that's because I've taken it directly from Minecraft Dungeons. I figured it was pretty fitting in this game as well. As you'd probably expect, this deals more damage to Illagers, and currently in this Datapack version, I included Vexes and Ravagers, I think Witches as well, just because they're all part of a raid and it makes a whole raid very easy and very farmable with this enchantment, which I might end up changing since those technically aren't Illagers, but the issue with Bane of Arthropods is the fact that most Arthropods don't do much damage and they also don't have a lot of health. Illagers to me make a lot more sense because all the variants, whether they're Vindicators or Evokers or whatever, all have more health than the player does, and they also deal a lot more damage. So I figured this was a pretty good enchantment, and it makes things like outposts, mansions, and raids a lot more fun. And finally, the last enchantment added for weapons is actually, you're not going to be able to find it in the enchanting table or in the overworld for that matter. We have to go somewhere a little warmer. Somewhere like the Nether. This next enchantment is a treasure exclusive, and you can only find it in nether structures such as the nether fortresses and bastion remnants. And that's because it's probably the most powerful enchantment you can get on your sword ever, and so it's actually guarded by all these blazes and stuff. Let's see if it's in this chest. No, it's not. That's not it right there. Let's see. Let's keep looking. So we're just going to pretend I found it by searching it up in creative mode, and that is Fire Affinity. This replaces Fire Aspect. It actually allows you to deal more damage to fire-based enemies, such as blazes, magma cubes, ghasts, since they shoot fire, and striders, since they live in lava. The other perk is that you can also deal additional damage to any mob that are on fire. For instance, I can kill the Evoker a lot easier. And yeah, so this encourages you to light enemies on fire, as you'll deal a lot more damage to them with this enchantment. It's kind of like how impaling works in water and in rain, except this one's more based on an environmental hazard, since fire is pretty dangerous, which also makes it high risk, high reward, since you could accidentally light yourself on fire. In my opinion, this is a pretty good enchantment for giving you an incentive to use other means of combat, and it also makes the flame enchantment a little more practical. Though, needless to say, it's incompatible with Flame for obvious reasons. That'd be a bit too powerful. But I think the power fantasy is there, because you can hit one enemy with your Flame Bow, and as they're on fire, you can run at them with your Fire Affinity Sword and dish out the damage very quickly. Nearing the end, I've got a few changes with the Elytra. Not all of these are enchantment based. The first thing I did was actually nerf Elytra, so the firework boost duration is now half. But to combat that, I've actually changed the original thing I had in the previous version with the mace, where it would deal damage based on fall distance. This has been changed to my original idea where it's velocity based, so if I just fly at these guys, I can deal damage based on velocity, not just fall damage. With my original proof of concept datapack, this was not possible to do in a very convenient way, but I learned some new ways to do it, and now it works really well. So, for example, if I fly and boost into this villager at top speed, I will deal plenty of damage. Now, it didn't necessarily kill him. I might have to increase the damage a little bit, but it did get him pretty low, as you can see. And in case you're wondering, the damage fall off is exponential decay based on movement speed. So if you're boosting with Firework, currently as it stands, you're going to deal about 8 more damage, but it is possible with proper timing and angling to deal as much as 10 extra damage. The last change I made is to make an enchantment that is an Elytra exclusive. Now this takes over the previous enchantment of Punch, and that is Wings of Icarus. And if you've seen a couple of my previous videos, then you'll know exactly what this does. And, you know, just soaring with the normal Elytra. It looks like I'm not gaining enough lift to get too high, though. So let me just flap my wings. And I got a bit of lift there. Yeah, you can flap your Elytra by pressing the sneak button. And this has a cooldown of 1 second. And generally, the slower you move, the less lift you get. But if you're moving really fast, for instance, then you can get a lot of lift. This actually compensates how weak fireworks are now, because you can use those for speed, but you can actually maintain your altitude with some proper dives and lifts. You can actually even gain altitude in some cases. Meaning with some skill and timing, you can preserve your momentum without using any fireworks at all. You just use one to get started, and you can use the dives and lifts generated from the jump to maintain your speed. Personally, I think this makes the Elytra more fun, and I think this should have been in the game to begin with when it was introduced. But yeah, I added it. It's a little bit finicky here and there, but overall it works pretty well in enchantment form, and I think you guys will have a lot of fun with this. Now down to the last set of changes, and this relates to Mending and Experience. So just like a few of the other 1.9 additions, Mending is kind of broken. Once you apply it to equipment, you pretty much don't have to worry about that equipment ever again, especially with Unbreaking 3. So I think you all knew it was coming, but yeah, I nerfed Mending. I didn't do the worst thing I could have done with Mending, which is make it exclusive to Unbreaking. No, all I did was just nerf it so it repairs only 1 durability instead of 2 per experience orb. In my opinion, this isn't a really hard nerf. It just means that you'll have to be more careful and earn a little more experience. But luckily, I gave you more ways to earn experience. And one of those is by harvesting crops, which honestly, I have no idea why this has never been in the game. By breaking these crops by hand, you'll have a chance to get some experience. As you can see, there's a couple of experience orbs there. I can mine all these, get a little bit of experience. I figured this was a pretty good idea given that farms and harvesting crops is generally not used in the game very much. It's a very underutilized mechanic. Farming is also easy to scale up, especially in endgame, so I figured giving it more of a use would be nice. And the overworld crops included in this are wheat, as you saw, carrots, potatoes, cocoa beans, and beetroots. And beetroots had a slight loot table change. I forgot to mention this, but they'll drop less seeds and more actual beetroots. And actually, beetroots are kind of unintentionally a meta now. And this is because they grow faster than the other crops on average, and they also have a high composting chance. So combining this with their chance to get experience now like the rest of the crops, they're kind of an unsung hero. So appreciate them more. Go ahead and eat them. They're delicious, I think. And just to let you know, you don't get anything for melons and pumpkins since this is based on breaking the crop itself by hand. You could easily turn those back into blocks and then just keep getting experience. So those don't give you anything. Another crop that does give you experience, however, is netherwort, and this will actually give you a 50% chance of gaining an experience orb versus the 20% that you get with the other crops. So if I just break a few of these, I actually get some pretty good experience. The reason being, of course, is that these are located in the nether and they also can't be bone mealed, so they take a lot longer to grow, so the XP reward is a bit higher. And the last crop you can get experience from is actually chorus plants. So just by breaking the bottom one, you have a chance to drop some experience. As you can see, I got some orbs even in creative mode. Now each of these chorus plants have a 10% chance to give you an experience orb, but since there are a lot of them, that overall translates to pretty much a guaranteed chance to get at least a couple, if not like 3 or more. And since these don't have to be broken by hand, it does mean that you can break them with a piston and it'll still drop experience. Now this may seem unfair for the rest of the crops, but keep in mind you cannot place these with dispensers like you can the other crops, so you can't make an automatic experience farm. You actually have to place the chorus flowers manually yourself. And you also can't bone meal them. So if you did like some of these changes, go ahead and give the pack a download. And if you've got any ideas for changes, be sure to let me know in the comments below, whether they're related to the enchantments I changed, maybe changing them again, or some ones I didn't change. Or if you've got ideas that have nothing to do with enchantments and just other gameplay quality of life stuff, do let me know. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.